You know, I really don't like this picture, and I should have switched it out because her head sort of cocked back, but that's all right. That's all right. Anaerobic training. Okay. So, like I said, high intensity intermittent bounce exercise. Okay. So you can look at general concepts, aerobic training, low intensity, longer type work, anaerobic, high intensity, shorter bursts. And these are just some examples: weight training, resistance training, whatever you want to call it. Plyometrics, which would be different types of jumping, essentially utilizing the stretch shortening cycle, bless you. Speed, agility, change of direction, okay, and interval training. So again, we hop on the assault bike, we go for 30 seconds, then we take a 2-minute break, 30 seconds, 2 minutes break, 2-minute break, anaerobic training. Okay. There's a few different skeletal muscle adaptations that are going to occur, and it depends on sort of what you're doing. We're going to increase the size of the muscle fiber potentially. Obviously, there's one up here that's probably going to increase the size the most, resistance training. Okay. Fiber type transitions and the biomechanical and structural components of the muscle. I'm going to give you a pop quiz, and I know I covered it slightly last week. This facilitating fiber type transition. First off, what is the primary muscle fiber that we would use for anaerobic training? So our high intensity. Type 1, type 2A, or type 2X?
For
high intensity, powerful exercises. Yeah, or 2X, however you want to label it. But yeah, type 2, you can classify those actually two together, but type 2X is our most forceful, highest force output muscle fibers. So those are the ones we're going to use for our high intensity forceful exercises or movements. Okay, so type 2X. Type 1 would then be, what do we use type 1 primarily for? Yep, endurance training. So now, muscle fiber type transitions. Again, it's just a little quiz. I guess there is a right or wrong answer, but I'm not writing down who answered it correctly. So, can we transition from type 1? So let's say I have 80%, which is crazy, but 80% type 1 muscle fibers, which means I'm pretty damn good at endurance events, ideally. Okay. Can I then decide I want to be an Olympic sprinter and transition to 80% type 2X? So no, you can't transition all the way from one to the other. You can make mini transitions within. So I can make my type 1 muscle fibers, my slow twitch endurance muscle fibers, a little bit more powerful. But I can't transition all the way.
It means that we are extenders, that we are more ability.
Yep, exactly. So there is a genetic component. Like if I had a choice, I would have raced Usain Bolt, 100%. But guess what? I don't have those genetics, right? I mean, I tried with training, but that's just the fact of the matter. So it doesn't mean that obviously it's all genetics to get him to that point. A lot of training and everything. But you can't transition all the way to one or the other. You sort of have a spectrum in there, and you can shift a little bit. You can make your muscle fibers a little bit more forceful, or you can make them a little bit more aerobic or endurance based, but we can't transition all the way. Okay. All right. So we got neuromuscular adaptations, improved muscle strength, power, endurance, depending on what we're doing. Obviously, endurance a little bit less so with anaerobic training, but again, depending on how we structure it, which we'll talk about later. Okay. I'm going to be talking a lot about resistance training. This sort of how they structure the chapters. And they do this in the Essentials of Strength Conditioning book too, is they talk about anaerobic adaptations more so with resistance training. and then they leave speed, agility, change of direction, plyometrics for sort of a different chapter. So that's how we're sort of going to be talking about this lecture. So this lecture is going to be primarily based on resistance training, which is a type of anaerobic training, but just understand there's other types of anaerobic training as well that have a little bit different adaptations. Okay. Let's see what I got to cover in here. All right. So in general, resistance training will increase the cross-sectional area of a muscle. Can anyone explain what cross-sectional area is? I mean, it's size in a simple term, but you guys ever been to a deli or a Publix, the deli section, where they slice the meat? Boom, boom. So it goes from a piece of ham, a log of ham, and they slice off a section. That's essentially the little slices cross-sectional area. Think you did that with your bicep, your quadricep, any muscle. That's a cross-sectional area. So one of the adaptations to resistance training is, in general, I'm going to increase the cross-sectional area of that muscle. And the relationship between the size of a muscle, the cross-sectional area, and the force output is positive. What do I mean by that? What do I mean by a positive relationship between the cross-sectional area and the force output? Yep, exactly. So as I increase the cross-sectional area with resistance training, in general, my force output is what? Gonna go up. Yep, in general. There's some caveats there. You can.
You're saying that the cross-sectional area is like the belly of the muscle, or?
Well, not necessarily the belly, but take the muscle, like literally took my bicep, and then I sliced it, and it would just be like that. So yeah, if it got bigger, it would.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Yeah. But it doesn't necessarily have to be in the belly, but all right. Let's see, neuromuscular efficiency would be that component that I talked about, anaerobic adaptations to resistance training, especially at the beginning of a resistance training program, or you have a beginner athlete or a young athlete, a child or youth. Are they going to put on a lot of muscle mass and really increase the size? If they don't have a lot of testosterone, they're not going to, right? So how do they get stronger? How do children get stronger? How can they get better at doing a push-up or a bodyweight squat? Neuromuscular efficiency. Okay, so their body basically learns how to do that movement without increasing the size of the muscle fiber. Okay, so there's some different ways you can improve, but those are anaerobic adaptations to resistance training. Improve body composition. I don't need to touch upon that. I think you guys know resistance training. That's one of the benefits. Okay, flexibility. This is only true if we go through full range of motion. Obviously, we're going through partial range of motion. We're going to shorten the muscle. Okay. And then cardiovascular fitness, you can read that. It depends on how we structure our anaerobic training. So if I do more of like a circuit-based thing, even if I'm lifting relatively heavy weights, if I have a squat, bench press, dumbbell row, RDL, whatever, core exercise, and even if those are relatively heavy, so I'm getting stronger, probably improving my force output, still, if I rotate through those in a pretty fast pace, I can still work a little bit on cardiovascular fitness or aerobic fitness. Okay, so those are some of the benefits of resistance training. All right, is this completely foreign to you guys? No? How many of you guys have seen this before? All right, pretty good amount. Okay, so as far as muscular contraction, I'm not going to go through the lines and everything. That's more for a physiology class. I would watch this video. This crash course has some awesome videos. The guy's a little goofy, so beware of that. A little bit goofier than me, but he does a great job explaining. They have some great visuals. But essentially, when a muscle contracts, these little guys are gonna hook on here. So the little heads, they're gonna hook on and pull it. They're gonna hook on, pull it, shorten this space. That's essentially what a muscular contraction is. And they're just doing that rapidly within the muscle fiber, constantly over time. Okay. But watch this, especially if this is foreign to you guys. He's going to do a great job explaining this. Okay. All right. But in terms of muscular contraction, muscles are only going to contract. They're only going to relax. So that will be some kind of quiz question or exam question. Okay. They're not exerting any force on the ground or the body or anything like that. So it's a little, I know a lot of people, I'm guilty of it myself, is like, I would say push force in the ground when they were doing a deadlift or a squat. It's not really the case. You're not really putting force in the ground. Your muscles are essentially applying forces to the bones to get them to move. That's essentially what it is. So muscle is only going to contract or relax. Okay. To what? Yeah. There's coaching cues that's a whole science in itself. There's a whole book that was written fairly recently on coaching cues, external versus internal. What's his name? Nick Winkelman, I think. It's really interesting. Yeah. Like doing a vertical jump. If I were having you guys do vertical jumps in general, if I said try and touch your head to the ceiling, so external would be a better cue than yeah, put some force in the ground, essentially. Yeah. All right. So with the muscles, any kind of movement of the body, we're going to have an agonist, which is essentially the muscle that's performing the action, and an antagonist, the opposite muscle. Gosh, so I want to say this. I'm going to say an easy way to remember agonist and antagonist is it's usually on the opposite side of the bone or the joint. Not always, so don't quote me there, but a lot of times. If I'm doing a bicep curl, does it say here? No, perfect. All right, bicep curl. So I got to wait. I curl it up. Which is the agonist? Which is the antagonist? Yup. Agonist, bicep. Antagonist, triceps. Okay, opposite side of the bone, not always the case. How about, let's see. Now let's do a push-up. Push-up, I can have multiple different ones. Push-up, I'm here, go down, go up. What are agonist versus antagonist?
Agonist would be in chest, right?
Yep, chest, yep, that's one of them. Delts will be there. Save that for a second. Save that. Yeah, chest and triceps. That would be the agonist, which would mean the antagonist. Biceps and back. Yep. Again, opposite side of the body, opposite side of the bone. Perfect. That's an easy way to remember. Not always going to be the case. Now, why I say hold on to deltoids, those are sort of a synergist, which is more for like stabilizing the joint, essentially. Yep. Yeah, agonist would be what is contracting. What you're working out. That's the easiest way to remember. Antagonist is what's the opposite. It does help in stabilizing the joint. Okay. Just like synergist. Synergist is a little different though. All right. Yep. So we're good on agonist, antagonist. Perfect. All right. Let me go. All right. Who can explain motor units? Like maybe what they are, how they work, what they do. Again, no judgment in this classroom. So you get it wrong, no big deal. We'll fix it.
Do you think Cynthia
Yep. You're along the perfect line. Yep. So they're gonna be what what receives, we'll say, the electrical impulse.
So they involve in brain muscle memory
Mhm.
and reflexes.
Yep. All right. So you guys are going. No, you guys are right. All right. I'm gonna go with based on your guys' answer. So motor units are essentially what's gonna receive the electrical signal from your brain and spinal cord, and they got little connections that go into your little muscle fibers, and if they're signaled to contract, they're going to cause that muscle to contract. If they're signaled to relax, obviously relax. Okay, but a motor unit is a neuron, and all the muscle fibers it innervates. Okay, so here you can see there's two different motor units. You can have a motor unit that controls very few muscle fibers. You can have a motor unit that controls a bunch. Okay, so in general, motor units like you have more like fine motor units in your fingers, in your face, everything like that. Whereas motor units in your quad are a little bit more rudimentary because your quad isn't doing all these fine motor skills. Okay, so motor unit. So just like our muscle fiber, our muscles, we're going to contract or relax. That's it. It's because of the all or none principle. Essentially, I want you guys to think about a motor unit like a regular light switch. It's either on or off, not one of those dimmer switches. It's a light switch. It's either on. If it's on, telling the muscle fiber to contract. If it's off, relax. Okay, that's the all or none principle. Okay. All right, let's see. Size principle. All right, we talked about this last week. Okay. Does anyone, I guess it explains it right here. But, so when we're talking about, remind me, aerobic activities, endurance activities, what are we going to primarily be using and why? Say it again. Aerobic is what?
Aerobic type 2.
Aerobic more type 1. The low threshold. Okay. So just look at this. Yep. So we need those. If we have low force production, like aerobic training or endurance training it's lower force production than plyometric speed resistance training. We don't need to recruit a lot of those high threshold motor units because we don't need that force output, right? What do we need? We need a little bit low force output, but on the opposite end of the spectrum, it's going to last. We're going to be able to last forever. Not forever, but for a while. Okay. Whereas if we talk about anaerobic training, which is high intensity, we want to recruit those type 1 motor units. Even though they don't last as long, they're going to have high force output. Okay. So that's the size principle. Essentially, with resistance training, I want you to think about this. I should have drawn on there, but resistance training. Does everyone know sort of like what a 1 rep max is? Yeah. And if I base a percentage off that 1 rep max, like if I'm doing 40% of my 1 rep max, does that make sense? Good. Anyone that doesn't, no big deal. All right. So if I'm doing, let's say 40% of my 1 rep max, which is less than half. So if I can squat 200 pounds, it's 90 pounds or so. So pretty light, right? Do I need a lot of force or no? No, I don't need a lot of force. So let's say I'm recruiting all these motor units, these muscle fibers that are below that line. This is my line of 40%. So I'm going to recruit all the motor units, all the muscle fibers below that. Now, let's say I go to 75%. What's going to happen to this line? So here's my 40% line. Yeah, it's going to go up here. So now, why is that? Because I need more force production. So this is the size principle. Now here's my 75% line. I'm going to recruit a lot more of these yellow type 2 muscle fibers, but I'm also going to recruit all the ones below. Okay, so that's my 75% line. Question?
Yeah, not really about this though, but it does include like motor units. So and it's kind of off topic.
Oh, it's fine.
All right. So in terms of like mind muscle connection, why does it feel like whenever so let's say you're doing like a lat pull down, right? And you don't really have the mind muscle connection to feel your lats yet, so you're just doing the workout. And like as you improve on building that mind muscle connection, then you finally start to feel like your lats are actually contracting more than previously to when you had that, but motor units are all or none. Like, do you know something behind that?
All right, I'm going to take my best guess, but I'm not sure.
Okay.
Motor units, you're exactly right. Motor units are all or none. Gosh darn it, I wish I had a picture or something. All right, so motor units are all or none. But you have many different motor units that, let's just say, take the lats. Let's, for a crude example, I have 8 motor units in my lat, and they control the whole muscle. So maybe what happens when you don't have that mind-muscle connection is maybe you're recruiting 4 of those 8 motor units, which means those 4 are on, but my other 4 are off. So I'm not getting a full contraction. As I continue training, one of the things, let's say I don't even change the size of your lat, but now I get stronger. You're like, well, why did I get stronger if the size didn't change? Well, now I recruit 6 of those 8 motor units, and I still have 2 off. So those 6 are on, those 2 are still off. And then I continue getting stronger. Now maybe all 8 are on, and my mind muscle connection is, I feel like it's all there.
All right.
That's potentially one way.
Thank you.
Yep.
And so basically your body adapts for what you need.
Exactly.
You're
That's
leaving the motor unit because I don't need to do this.
exactly. If you don't, you guys are spot on. I don't think you're off topic at all. You guys are spot on. You want to make adaptations to whatever sport or whatever activity you're doing. And we're getting a little ahead of ourselves, but I'm going to come right back to you. All right. I went from 75%, and this is the size threshold or the size principle. That means I'm going to recruit some of those high threshold motor units because I need that force, but I'm also recruiting all those other type 1. Now, again, what's going to happen in that line if I go from 75% to 95%? I'm doing a single or a double with 95% up and to the right. I'm basically recruiting all my motor units, which means I'm recruiting all my muscle fibers within that muscle. So I'm recruiting all of these. And that's why resistance training in general, high intensity resistance training is such a potent stimulus to your nervous system, because it's pretty difficult to recruit all your muscle fibers, all your motor units, and doing any other activity. Okay, so resistance training, even for an endurance athlete, there are times when they need these type 2 muscle fibers, right? Maybe that at the end of their race, when they're doing the all-out sprint. I was so impressed with the Olympics this past year because, I mean, I don't know if it's just me realizing more, but it seemed like all like 800, the mile, all those longer races, their kick at the end was pretty fast. I was impressed. It seemed like in older times that you would just try and maintain your speed and then hope at the end that you could maintain your speed. But now it seems like they got a real kick, which means they're using a bit more type 2 muscle fibers at the end.
Is that because they have, because of the circumstances of the race, their tactic is that they have more technology now to relate on balances between these 2 fibers,
Yeah.
anaerobic and anaerobic, and they know exactly where they are, so that they know where they can just go it. Or if it's too much, that's it, I'm slowing down.
Yeah, it's a combination. It's tactical. Yeah. Working with the coaches, but also, and it's not even necessarily muscle fibers, but it's differences in training. Like your low intensity days are gonna be low, but your high intensity days are gonna be real high. We're gonna do some sprint work. So it's almost they're separating the middle ground, like, hey, let's not go at medium intensity for a while. Why don't we go low intensity to build up your aerobic base, high intensity to work on that kick. Yeah, it's really cool. And that's sports science is kicking up big time. That's why I get a little worked up about it because I think it's real cool myself. But all right, size principle. I guess I spend a lot of time on that. Size principle. Okay, we're going to recruit those motor units and those muscle fibers that we need for that activity. If it's low force, primarily type 1. If it's high force, type 2. If it's resistance training, high intensity resistance training, we're going to recruit all those down there. If it's more our speed plyometrics, we can selectively recruit basically just these ones. Okay, so that's selective recruitment. That's a little caveat to our size principle. Okay, all right. Oh, there it is, selective recruitment right there. Perfect. Just another picture. I don't need to spend time on that. You can look at that. Here's our muscle fibers. Okay. Again, there's a few more like subcategories, but in general, just for our purposes, we can think of type 1 as our slow twitch, endurance type muscle fibers. Type 2A are sort of that middle ground in there. Type 2X are high force output, but they don't last very long muscle fibers. Okay. So again, endurance training, primarily type 1, sprint type work, speed, high power output, primarily 2X. Okay. And that's why they're highlighted. Type 2A would still be classified as a fast twitch muscle fiber. That's why they're highlighted in blue. But just know there's some that are in that middle ground. All right, good with that. All right. Let's see. So phases of the muscle contraction. So now not only do we have agonists and antagonists, okay, but we have different phases of the muscle contraction. So for this, I want you guys to just think about the agonist, which again is what? The muscle that's essentially doing the work. So squat is a little bit more difficult from a agonist and antagonist standpoint. So I'm going to start with the bicep curl again. Easiest example. Again, bicep curl. Actually, no. I want to do one because you guys are smart. It's still an easy one, but tricep push down. Tricep push down. What is my agonist? What's my antagonist? Yep. Perfect. Tricep agonist, muscle doing the work. Bicep antagonist. Okay. So now I have 3 different phases of the muscle contraction: eccentric, amortization, and concentric. No, I'm not going to give you another quiz right now. All right. The squat, we can come back to that. All right. Phase 1, eccentric. I'm going to go. All right, I'll do this. We'll do the tricep push down. We're starting from the bottom. So we're here. As I go up, I'm doing the eccentric phase of the motion, which means the agonist is lengthening. It's lengthening against some kind of resistance. So that's the basic principle of eccentric. Anything eccentric with a muscle action is a lengthening of the muscle. The muscle is getting longer. So my tricep is fully contracted here. Boom, I'm coming up. It's lengthening, getting longer, longer, longer. Okay? So that's the eccentric part of training. Again, I can use that squat example in a second. I'll use it. Don't think about agonists and antagonists with a squat. Squat, my muscles are lengthening. Some are shortening, but in general, which is my eccentric part of the squat. Downward portion, downward, downward, downward. My muscles are lengthening against the resistance. Down, 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 down. Okay? All right. So eccentric, that's the main thing. I know there's a lot of words on here, but lengthening of the muscle. Amortization is essentially the transition between eccentric and concentric. not as important during resistance training as during plyometrics, but it's all it is this transition phase. That's all it is. Okay. Goal is to minimize this phase. That's essentially during plyometrics and speed and change of direction. Resistance training, you don't have to shorten that phase, but that is during plyo. Okay. And then concentric is a muscle shortening. So tricep push down. This is eccentric. Okay. Or amortization. I'm pausing. And then I push it down. What is that downward phase? Concentric. My squat. What is this again? Eccentric. What is this? Yup. Concentric. Perfect. 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 Push up. What is this? Yup. 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 Perfect. 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 Okay. Eccentric muscles lengthening, amortization, transition, concentric muscles shortening. Okay. Perfect. Nice job. All right. A little bit more. Okay. Modes of resistance training. Do I want to spend a lot of time on this? No, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but I'll fly through it real quick. Dynamic, variable resistance, isometric. Okay. Dynamic is basically free weights. You can read the benefits, limitations. Okay. Essentially any kind of free weights. Okay. Maybe not that much weight. All right. Variable resistance training, weight machines, as you can see here, leg extension, any kind of weight machine, variable resistance. You can see the benefits, limitations. Not going to spend a lot of time because it's pretty straightforward. Isometric training. Isometric training would be essentially where the muscle is not lengthening or shortening. Yep, plank. Perfect. A lot of different plank variations, our glute bridge hold, anything where our muscle is not lengthening or shortening. Say it again.
The muscle is not moving.
Yeah, yep. We're not moving, the muscle is not moving. So this is an example of isometric mid-thigh pull. This is an isometric bench press. He's trying to push as hard as he can against that. So his muscle is contracting, but it's not shortening because there's no movement involved. Isometric mid-thigh pull, you can click on that. I did that for one of my studies. Just like you're doing about to do a hang clean. Okay, I'm here. I'm trying to pull on that bar as hard as possible, and it's not going anywhere. It's in a little rack. I'm pulling as hard as I can, not going anywhere. Okay, question?
So it's intentional or unintentional?
Intentional. And essentially what this is doing, I'm going to have you help me answer this question. Why would we do isometric training or isometric movement? So I'll give you a hint. This guy, well, he looks like he's pressing pretty hard. I'm doing a maximal isometric mid-thigh pull.
I can answer.
Yeah.
Usually when he's doing a form of like a dynamic variation, correct? Because he's working on the bench press that's its own movement, right?
Well, no, don't think of it dynamic. Think of it only isometric.
Well, then I would say that it would probably be to work those muscles in that exact range of motion.
All right. That's a great. All right. So you typically want to work through some sticking points, the joint angles that you're weak at, which is perfect. And another main thing with isometrics, if it's truly intentional, is it's going to be a high force output movement, which means what? When we talk about size principle, if it's high force, what am I going to do? What am I going to recruit? Yeah, more motor units, especially those type 2, those high thresholds. So essentially, I can activate those movements and I work through those sticking points. And then hopefully when I go back to dynamic movements, I'm a little bit better at those movements. Okay, so perfect. Isometric training. I didn't even put it on here. Eccentric training. I just listened to a whole podcast this morning on eccentric training. Eccentric training is becoming huge for various reasons, but that's a whole other type of training. You can perform it differently. You can essentially just use, let's say, a squat, and I can do tempo training. Again, with a squat, they have little like releases that they basically think about like things that hang off the bar. So let's say I'm hanging 50 pounds off the bar. On the way down, the weight is 50 pounds heavier, and then they hit the ground and they release, and I come up, the weight is 50 pounds lighter. Okay, so that's basically like accentuated eccentric load, I think is what they call it. And yeah, I could have put that on here. That's essentially a whole other type of training. So if any of this really interests you, you can really dive into it. Eccentric training, isometric training, variable resistance training. There's a lot that's out there. You can do a whole PhD on that.
So is eccentric training kind of like negative bench to where?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. So you can do it, I think, well, you explained what you were gonna say. I cut you
So
off.
like you put a bunch of weight that you wouldn't be able to lift on the bar, you have a spotter, so you learn to slowly lower it with control, and then you just push it back up with the spotter, so you build all the muscles for the lower.
Yep. And you just got into one of the points that was on here that I didn't cover specifically, but I was gonna give a pop quiz at the end. So what phase of movement are you strongest at? You just answered it. Do you need a,
Eccentric?
huh?
The eccentric phase?
Yeah. Because you know it. You can do more weight on the eccentric portion, but then you need a spotter to lift it up, right? Yeah. So eccentric overload. That's exactly what it is. Did you have a question? Anyone back there? No? Okay, perfect. All right. So yeah, guys, there's a lot of stuff on isometric, eccentric. I mean, concentric is obviously all sporting and muscle actions, but there's a lot of benefits to these. I actually got to look more into eccentric training now. All right, let's see. Well, here, I already covered this. Anaerobic training does not necessarily mean resistance training. I probably should have put this at the top of the PowerPoint, but just know we've been talking a lot about resistance training, but that doesn't mean resistance training is the only type of anaerobic training. Okay. Here's some anaerobic conditioning. You can look at that. All right, program design. This is going to be, I believe, the last thing we cover. There's going to be a few slides on this, and then we'll get out of here. Okay. So resistance training program design. This is really any kind of program design. We'll just be talking about it in terms of resistance training. But essentially, we need to start with a needs analysis. And then we need to follow these principles of specificity, overload, and progression. And we'll touch on what those are. But, all right, now you guys got to put yourself in my shoes a little bit. Needs analysis. I assign you guys to work with a certain sport that in certain athletes that maybe you've never worked with before. You need to perform a needs analysis. What are some things you would think about you probably have to do in the needs analysis? So again, you're a strength conditioning coach. All right, you're working with, I can't choose a sport because you guys are all coming from different backgrounds, but choose a sport you never worked with. What do you got to do?
I assume you have to like observe the sport and see like which muscle groups are like major for it.
Yep. So, all right, I'm gonna just put a caveat. I wouldn't say necessarily what muscle groups. I would say more muscle movement. Yep, but you're perfect. You're spot on. I'm just being picky. So sporting movements. What else?
What type of muscle fibers to target, whether it's like fast twitch or slow twitch muscle fibers?
Yeah, so essentially a physiological analysis of that sport. Are we working, is it more a sprint-based sport, a high output, high intensity, short duration type sport? Is it on the opposite end of the spectrum, endurance-based, or is it maybe in between, like a soccer? Okay.
So I guess looking for if it's for anaerobic sport, like if you're sprinting, it's gonna be anaerobic, and like if you're doing I don't know, playing soccer, it's gonna be aerobic.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So there's that, physiological analysis. That's perfect. Because you got to stress what the body needs for that sport. All right. What else? More on it. We have one actually that we haven't covered from a sport basis, but then there's some from an individual basis. Yep. So that would be individual basis. What are their goals? What are we basing those goals off of though? Well, go ahead. Yep. So essentially, conceptually though, why would we're like, how are we basing those goals and why are we even doing the 1 rep max? To see if they're, to see their progression and to see if they're deficient. Maybe if we do a 1 rep max and they're plenty strong enough for their sport, well, guess what? We don't really need to work on max strength with them. We can work on maybe more speed or more endurance type stuff. Yep. Yeah, are you talking from an individual basis? Yeah, that's perfect individual assessment. That's perfect. And there's one, well, I won't tie it into there. There's one that I want you guys to think about that can be both from a individual level and a group level. If I gave you a sport and I gave you athletes, besides what we already touched upon, what do you guys think you might need to know?
How to prevent an injury in that sport?
Injuries, perfect. So what injuries are common within that sport and how we can reduce those. And also from an individual standpoint, what is that individual's injury history? You know, I've had athletes, like I had one football athlete that had like a plate in his wrist. So he couldn't do any kind of cleans because he couldn't flex that wrist or extend that wrist. Okay, something like that. Even though from a sporting standpoint, I thought cleans was necessary for football, that guy couldn't do it, so we had to do some variations. Okay, perfect. All right, perfect. So evaluation of the sport, evaluation of the athlete, okay, movement patterns, physiological analysis, okay, position-specific attributes we didn't get into too much, but injury, okay. Training status, I guess I should have covered that one. Are they a beginner? Are they an elite advanced athlete? Okay, an assessment leads into their goals. So the 1 rep max, if they're deficient, okay, that should be a goal. We need to get stronger. Okay, perfect. All right. Now specificity, essentially what this means, I'm not going to read through all this, but you need to target whatever is necessary for that sport and whatever is necessary for that athlete. Okay. So again, if we need to work on muscular endurance or aerobic endurance in general, we're doing much different training than if that athlete needs to work on their 20-meter speed, right? So we have to be specific to that individual's needs, that sporting needs. Okay, so we got to be on target. That's essentially what it means. All right, overload. Have you guys heard of this story? Okay. Does anyone want to explain it? Milo? Has anyone not heard of that story? Okay. So somebody explain it. I want to take a break from talking. I talk too much. I don't care.
So from what I remember, it's basically, it's about overload. It's progression. So the guy was carrying like a calf, and then as the calf grew, he became stronger because he was carrying a heavier animal each time. And through progression, he was able to carry the bull from the calf.
Yep. So exactly. He basically got a calf when he was younger. So when it was obviously a calf, and he picked it up every single day. And obviously the calf got a little bit bigger, but he also got stronger. So every single day he was just doing, a half pound, a pound of more work. And so over time, those pounds add up to he's going from a calf to a whole bull. Okay, so it's essentially overload. Now, is it as straightforward and linear as that? No, of course not. And we're probably gonna reach some kind of physiological point where we can't do it anymore. But I will tell you, beginners with resistance training, oh my gosh, you can do some bad programs with them, but essentially you can throw on weight every single time they enter the gym. So, okay, we're gonna squat 100 pounds today. All right, we come in 2 days later. All right, we're going 102.5 or 103. All right, next day we're doing 106 and like that. And they can go for a year, well, potentially a year or two while continuing to add weight. Okay, so that's essentially overload. We give the body a little bit more than what it's used to, which causes stress. Okay. Yeah, yep. Essentially, yep. You have your ceiling up here, and a beginner will shoot up fast, and then as you get more advanced, slower. Yeah, and that's why, going back to Olympics, milliseconds. Like if someone PRs milliseconds or 1/10 of a second is crazy because they're so close to that ceiling, they're right here. Whereas a beginner, can make some serious progressions. But yeah, yep, that's why. All right, oops. All right, and then progression. Okay, we basically just have to make sure we're progressing in obviously weight, intensity. Maybe if we're talking about aerobic athletes, we're talking about distance or duration, types of exercises we're doing. Okay, are we doing beginner? Maybe we can even do body weight squats, and then maybe we go to a kettlebell squat, and then maybe we go to a barbell front squat, and then maybe finally we get to a barbell back squat, something like that. Progression over time. Let's see. You guys can read this, pretty straightforward. Training frequency is just a number of training sessions per day or per week. Okay, as you can see here again, beginners need a lot less because essentially anything is an overload for a beginner. They haven't done it before. So if you give them a little bit, it's still an overload. Whereas you have an advanced level athlete, which has been doing something for a long time. Okay, you need, in order to work that overload principle, you need to give them a little bit more of what they don't have. Okay, that doesn't mean just work. You have to work smarter as well. Okay, but this is just training frequency. You guys can read that. All right. So again, specificity, training load and repetitions. Okay. I truly can't remember if this is on a quiz or exam. I don't think it is, but I will tell you, if you guys take my strength conditioning class, it definitely will be. But essentially what I want you guys to get from this table is, depending on what kind of resistance training we're doing, if we're doing strength, are we doing more power? Are we doing more muscular hypertrophy, working on size? Again, we need to be specific to that target. So we need to hit a certain amount of repetitions and a certain amount of intensities. Okay, so just to give you guys sort of a thought process. Intensity is probably the key when it comes to any kind of training. Speed, aerobic training, resistance training, anything like that. Intensity is probably key. Because what happens if I say, all right, today we're gonna do acceleration training. So we're gonna do short 15-meter sprints. We're probably gonna do 10 of them with like 3 minutes break in between. Okay, perfect, right? I know we haven't gone through the program design, but that's a decent program for acceleration. Okay, but now when I say intensity is key, what happens if I jog through those 15 meters? My volume is good, my repetitions is good, my rest periods are on point, but my intensity is way off. So I'm not going to get faster, even if everything else is perfect. Just like resistance training. Let's say All right, I'm gonna get stronger today. I'm gonna work on strength. So strength based on this table, and you guys probably know, I'm gonna do 3 sets of 5 reps. That's a perfect strength with 4 minutes in between. Okay? So 3 by 5, 4 minutes in between. Perfect reps, sets, rest periods. But then I throw 25% of my run rep max on the bar. Am I gonna get stronger?
Nope.
No, because my intensity is off. Now, maybe if I move it fast, potentially I could work on some power, but that's a different story. I'm not getting stronger. So that's why intensity is key. Okay, so when we talk about load in terms of resistance training, that's your intensity. If I say load, it's the same thing as intensity. Okay. All right, here's a good table, just what the different reps are working, depending on that goal. I talked about this at the beginning, percentage of 1 rep max. If you're not sure, if that doesn't make sense, let me know. Progression, let's see, good. All right, I'm just flying through this because I think you guys can read this. And if it doesn't need explanation, I'm not really going to do it too much. Whoops. This is a little confusing, just moving forward. It's just so you guys know from a practical standpoint, core exercises, most of your textbooks are going to say core exercises are like our main exercises. We don't need core as this. Core as in, all right, squat, clean, maybe bench press, maybe a chin up or some kind of row, RDL, our main core exercises. Okay. Auxiliary or assistance exercises are those secondary ones. Those are the exercises that we're going to do for injury prevention type work. Those are going to be the, well, core type exercises, planks, leg lift, leg raises, farmer's walks, all that stuff. Okay. Let's see. Essentially, that said principle falls right in line with our specificity principle. Whatever demands we place on that athlete or that individual or that client, those are the adaptations that are going to occur. That's essentially what it means. Okay. Exercise order. All right. Well, all right. I don't want you guys to read that slide. I want to just quiz you first. Exercise order. We're almost done, guys. So we're almost out of here. All right. So you can structure exercises in different orders, but there is, I guess, a proper way or a best practice way to do it. If I give you guys, I'll start off. All right. A clean or snatch. Doesn't matter which one. Does everyone know what a clean is here? Boom. Power clean, hand clean, whatever you want to do. So a clean, squat, and a leg curl. What's proper exercise order for those? And why? Either one, you guys. Okay, now tell me why. Yeah, so that's exactly why. Now I'm gonna. Why? Why did you switch it just now? But what's it? All right. So now you got it right. So it'd be clean first, squat second, leg curl third. Now, why we're putting cleans and squats at the beginning is just what you said, because it's our core exercises. Those are our main exercises. So we probably want to have the best effort when we're doing those exercises. So now, good. Leg curl is down there. We got rid of that. That's why. Well, we did get rid of it, but that's The reason why. Difference between power clean and squat.
You need more muscles for the power clean, right?
It's arguable.
You need more force.
Okay, we need more force. Yeah, exactly. You guys are all on point. There's one, actually, keep going, keep talking. There's one other thing that I think one of you guys is gonna be able to get. Yeah. Keep going.
Do you need 2x for the clean? Does it have to do with that?
Well, no. Yes, you do, but it doesn't have to do with that. Because I'll explain why. It could. Not the answer I'm looking for though.
Does it have to be with the lactate?
No. All right. Give me 2 more answers if they're.
Did we cover it?
Huh? No, but it's something. These are not wrong answers. There's just one. All right, I'll give it to you guys. All right, so the reason I'm gonna say no with some of the like type 2 with a force output is because we could do a squat, a powerful squat, a speed squat, where we're still working the same type muscle fibers. So it could be the same. So you say, well, what's the difference then between clean, where yes, I need a lot of force output and I need a lot of rate of force development. I need to produce force very quickly, but also I could do a speed squat and I could do it the same way. Technique. We don't really want to do too many cleans. Now, CrossFitters are crazy with that. I mean, truthfully, maintaining, Matt Fraser, like the best ever, right? Yeah, can maintain his technique doing 50 reps of a clean, the first rep and the 50th rep. Guess what? A lot of the people that we're working with, athletes included, are not going to be like that. So we want, when they're freshest, we want to perform the power clean, the power type exercises, because not only is it usually have more force output, but also that technique component.
Yeah, with that guy, he was explaining, he was a high school, college, powerlifter.
Yeah.
Professors insisted on techniques for years.
Mm-hmm. Oh, it's.
Yeah, he's different.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Big time. I mean, yeah, it's crazy. But those are outliers. That's not typically the case. But yes, your guys' answers were correct. Now, here. Now I'm going to switch out. Instead of power clean, we're going to do a weighted vertical jump. So either barbell, dumbbells. Now, what would be the proper exercise order and why? I think we all know leg curl is going to be third, right? We're good with that? Okay, why? All right, so I'm going to push back a little bit. Let's say it's more of a strength-based squat workout. Okay, so strength-based squat workout, and then vertical jump, what are we trying to do? Explosive power movement.
So after they do the squats, whatever they're building, they're more explosive, they'll do lighter than squats.
So there is a little bit of that, but that's very advanced. So so for now, I'm gonna say no. But there is actually something to that, which is, shoot, I'm not gonna get into that today, guys. I could, but that was another study that I did. I'm not even gonna tell you what it is if you want to talk to me after. But we want to do the vertical jump first because that's the highest force output, or that's the highest power output exercise. So we don't want to be fatigued at all. Whereas a strength-based squat workout, it's high force, but it's slower force. So the vertical jumps aren't necessarily going to fatigue us. Okay. All right. So that's exercise order. I hope that makes sense to you guys. Essentially, we want to do our power exercises. They typically need the quickest, the rate of force development. So we need a lot of force, but also quickly. Then our other core exercises, then assistance. All right. You can read through this. Rest period is pretty straightforward. All right, good. Do we have any questions? Went through a lot today. Hopefully it was beneficial. Just a brief covering of anaerobic training versus aerobic. A lot of adaptations taking place. If you guys got questions later on, just let me know. Is everything good with the class? Okay, because again, this format, this is first time teaching it in this format, not seeing you guys every week. Sometimes I'm a little worried, but as long as you guys say it's good, then I'm gonna trust you. All right, thanks guys.